Hey guys, this is video 1 for Unit 1, Lesson 1, and we're talking about using Courageous Conversations Protocol as a guide for Semester 1 literature. The objective is students will be able to challenge previous notions of American history for our Lesson 1. This is Courageous Conversations About Race. It's a program that was started about 10-12 years ago, and we're going to use it to help us talk about some really tough stuff over the next 3 units. This is the question I want you to be thinking about as we go through this video. How can we talk about race? How can we, when we're from different places, we are of different races, how are we going to make any headway talking about this without just getting upset? Well, that is the question that this guy, E Singleton, has been asking and trying to help answer for quite a long time. He is the CEO and founder of Courageous Conversations, and he says you have to have courage, but you also have to have some norms and conditions in place. And so we're going to use the Courageous Conversations protocol as we move forward to talk about race. Singleton says on his website, courageousconversation.com, that race matters in our nation and around the world. It's critical that we address racial issues in order to uncover personal and institutional biases that prevent all people, and especially people of color, from reaching their fullest potential. And I think that as a district, we believe this too. The district actually incorporated Courageous Conversations a few years ago and had all teachers trained in this. And a lot of us use it now in the classroom. So the 4 agreements of Courageous Conversation are stay engaged, experience discomfort, speak your truth, and accept non-closure. And so you guys all have to be willing to agree to these things when we work on the next 3 units. So I'm hoping that you will be willing to agree. And when we come back as sort of a live class discussion, I will remind us of these agreements. Let's talk about what each one means. Stay engaged means remaining morally, emotionally, intellectually, and relationally involved in the dialogue. To stay engaged is to not let your heart and mind check out of the conversation while leaving your body seated at the table. And sometimes that's really hard to do. These are really difficult conversations that we're going to be having that trigger a lot of emotions for a lot of different people, or for all of us in different ways. Resist the natural inclination to move away from the conversation by disengaging. That's sort of the natural thing is, fight or flight, right? And we want to flee. And we know we can't quite fight in the classroom. So we have to resist that natural inclination because we're better than that lizard mind of ours. And we're going to be courageous and talk about these things. Number 2 is speak your truth. It means being absolutely honest about your thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and not just saying what you perceive others want to hear. To not speak our truth often leads to deeper confusion, mistrust, and misunderstanding. Speaking your own personal truth allows you to fully engage and develop your racial consciousness. 3 is experience discomfort. This means engaging in tough conversations that may make you feel uncomfortable. Agreeing to experience discomfort allows you to deal with the reality of race and racism in an honest and forthright way. This is how we build muscle, increasing our tolerance for discomfort so that we increase our ability to address the challenges associated with racial achievement disparity. Number 4 is accept non-closure. This means committing to an ongoing dialogue. Rule out any possibility of discovering a quick fix because there is not one. There is no technical solution to the problem of racism in our world. It is a much bigger, a much more complicated problem that we're going to start uncovering in this first lesson, at least in terms of its history. All right, so those are the norms. Here are the conditions. The first is to focus on personal, local, and immediate. The second is to isolate race. The third is to normalize social construction and multiple perspectives. The fourth is to monitor agreements, those 4 agreements we just looked at, and these conditions, and establish parameters. 5 is to use a working definition for race, which I'll offer in this video. And 6 is to examine the presence and role of whiteness. So the first, focus on personal, local, and immediate. This condition highlights one's own perspective, experiences, and beliefs. So you are going to, when you're talking about something, you're going to focus personally, locally, and immediate. So, as a white female, this is what I've experienced. I'm white. I can't imagine. I can imagine, but I have not been any other race. And so I'm speaking from my point of view. And so somebody else might say, as a Black male, I believe, I feel, I think. And that's important, where we come from. Our personal, our local, and our immediate. Now, when we talk about literature, we're going to be talking about characters a lot and their personal, local, and immediate stuff. And so we might say, well, Frederick Douglass felt this way at this point. And we know this because of page blah, blah, blah. And then we can use the text as our evidence. Isolate race is the next. This condition asks you to focus on race for the conversation. Now, we know because of intersectionality, which we will come back to later, that there are many things that determine an individual's position in society, not just race, right? But for our purposes, we'll focus on race, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that. 3, normalize social constructions and multiple perspectives. This condition recognizes that humans create socially constructed norms we all operate within. Different racial groups have different points of view to offer based off of their shared racial experience. So these constructions, these perspectives are different and they're valid. And so we're going to normalize that. Use a working definition of race is 5. So here is our working definition of race, and this comes from Courageous Conversations. It's a group of people thought to share certain distinctive physical characteristics, such as facial structure and or skin color. Now we say thought to because it's really a social construction. It's not scientifically based. Race is socially constructed. But even though it's socially constructed, it is very real. It has very real consequences. And so we have to look at it that way as well. I'll also offer this definition from Courageous Conversations. Racism, any act that even unwittingly, so even without knowing it, tolerates, accepts, or reinforces racially unequal opportunities or outcomes. 6, examine the presence and role of whiteness. Whiteness, the definition from Courageous Conversations, is the component of each and every one of ourselves that expects assimilation to the dominant culture. Assimilation, becoming part of, blending in with the dominant culture. And in this case, the dominant culture in this country is white. Not saying that's right. Saying that's how it is. And we would like to change that. We would like to make it equal. Privilege, here's the definition for that. That kind of fits with number 6. It's a right or advantage that is given to some people and not others. And so you hear a lot about white privilege. White privilege is simply the fact that white people have advantages in this country over others just because they're white. And period. All right. I want to show you this little activity when we talk about examine the presence and role of whiteness, because it's kind of a weird abstract thing to think about until you look at it real specifically. So this comes from Calvin Terrell, and he's got a great website too that you can investigate, calvinterrell.com. And I want you to try this activity right this second. So name and write every color you see on this page, okay? Name and write them. Pause the video for a second, do that. Did you pause the video for a second, do that? All right. Take a look at what you've written. Did you list the color white? If you didn't, why not? And even if you did list white, how might not naming it or being oblivious to its presence be relevant for our study of African American literature this semester? Think about that. This is a big topic. We'll come back to it. But it has to do with that number 6, looking at whiteness and its role. Because a lot of times we forget about that is a race, and that it has had a lot of effect on what we are talking about with racism. All right, we're going to use courageous conversations to talk about race. We are going to be courageous. It's not going to be easy. So I thank you for doing this with me. We're warriors, folks. And let's get started.